Hey, Jeff Hoyt here, Zeolite Labs, and I want to go over my thoughts and theory on zeolite dosing. And I call it the higher dose theory of zeolite. Basically, a number of years ago, I discovered that there was a dosing paradox when it comes to zeolite. And the higher dose of zeolite is actually gentler, along with being more effective, than the low dose. And first, I want to say this is educational purposes only. This is not a recommendation of any sort. Of course, work with a practitioner and make your own decisions when it comes to zeolite dosing. The theory is that taking 10 milligrams of zeolite is more likely to result in a negative detox reaction, such as headaches, irritability, or joint pain, than 10,000 milligrams, or 1,000 times the dose. The higher dose of zeolite is generally gentler and more effective on the body than the low dose. The reason is that the higher dose offers a more effective and efficient detox. The key is to have enough available zeolite particles to sop up the toxic elements in circulation and also have leftover zeolite particles to deal with any toxic stressors that are dumped into circulation through the detox process. The reason is that a higher dose of zeolite offers a more efficient and effective detox. The key is to have enough available zeolite cages to bind to all of the circulating toxins and have leftover zeolite cages available to bind to any toxic stressors that are dumped into circulation through the stress of the detox process. The formula for success is for the total binding volume, or just the amount of available zeolite cages, to be greater than the total circulating toxic load plus any toxic stressors that are added to circulation from the detox process. And this could be from lymph drainage, biofilm disruption, histamine release, free radical production, microbial waste products, metabolic waste products like ammonia, etc. Simply put, the dose of zeolite has to be sufficient to bind to everything currently floating around and also to anything dumped into circulation during the detox process. The traditional approach is to start with a low dose and work your way up, but what we found is actually taking a higher dose starting off and working your way down is ideal, because the healthier you are, the less you need. And the more layers of toxicity you have, the higher the dose you're going to need to be able to bind to all of these toxic elements. I'm going to go over 5 reasons why taking a higher dose of zeolite is often gentler and more effective than taking a low dose. Reason 1, a higher dose of zeolite reduces the redistribution of toxic elements. Redistribution occurs when things are stirred up during the detox process, but the body doesn't have enough detox energy to effectively excrete them all, and some of these toxic elements find a new home in the body or they redistribute. One way this can occur is through a phenomenon I refer to as the swap and drop. So to understand this, we have to understand how zeolite works. Zeolite is a smart or selective binder, meaning that it's not just going and grabbing everything it sees, it's selectively removing certain toxic elements. Now, zeolite naturally occurring has essential minerals like potassium, sodium, magnesium, and calcium in its cage-like structure. And when the zeolite cage comes across a toxic element it prefers, which is generally heavier, like a heavy metal, it swaps what it has for what it prefers. Now, the key to understand is that zeolite has unlimited swaps. It's going to continue swapping until it finds something that it has the highest level of affinity for, and then it excretes it from the body. So for example, let's say zeolite enters the body, it's got magnesium in its cage, and it comes across some mercury. Fantastic. It dislodges the mercury, it's got the mercury in its cage, it's left the magnesium behind. Everything's great because we don't want that mercury in the body. It's on the way out. But then the zeolite cage containing mercury comes across some lead. Now, zeolite has a stronger level of attraction to lead than to mercury, so it swaps the mercury for the lead. Now you've got the lead in the zeolite cage, but now you have free-floating mercury. Now, if you didn't take enough zeolite, this mercury could just redistribute and find a new home. That's an issue. If you took the higher dose, now you've got these extra zeolite particles waiting on the sideline to bind to that mercury before it redistributes and finds a new home. This is very important to consider because the information that you're going to find online is that zeolite does not negatively impact mineral or vitamin levels. And the reason this is said is because zeolite is not going to have a direct binding attraction towards those things because it already has the electrolytes in its cage, so it's only swapping them for more toxic or heavier elements, which is great. But we have to consider both that direct binding and the indirect mechanisms of action. So with the swap and drop, for example, when you take a very low dose of zeolite, and in that scenario we just discussed where it trades the magnesium for the mercury, then it trades the mercury for the lead, and the mercury redistributes, and that causes a stressful experience on the body. Now we're getting headaches and getting other symptoms, and now that's disrupting mineral status because it could potentially be displacing minerals, and it could be negatively impacting vitamin status because now oxidative stress is occurring and the body has to use more of its natural resources to combat that oxidative stress. So you can see we're taking the higher dose is actually gentler than the low dose, because when you take the higher dose, you're preventing that redistribution from occurring because you've got all these extra zeolite cages available to grab on to what was floating around, but then also what was potentially stirred up and swapped for potentially multiple times, and now you've got the zeolite grabbing it so it doesn't redistribute, and that's going to prevent the redistribution, and which is going to prevent potential mineral disturbances or vitamin imbalances. So a low dose of zeolite, something like a zeolite spray or a liquid zeolite, or just a very micro dose of a zeolite, is way more likely to cause a mineral disturbance or a vitamin imbalance than a higher dose. Because it's not about the direct ability to bind to those things, because they're not going to do that, but the stressful detox experience is going to result in impaired vitamin and mineral status. Let's talk about the toxin tumble. So let's say you take a small amount of zeolite, it goes in, it starts grabbing to things, and it triggers the body to start detoxing. So we get potentially lymph dump, we get the body just dumping some toxic elements from wherever they're at into circulation. But if you only took a small amount of zeolite and it grabbed, let's say 100 units of toxicity, but then the body dumped 1,000 units into circulation, then your body's going to have to start dealing with all that stuff on its own. And that's where a lot of times we get the detox reactions, because it's just a sign that our body can't handle what is currently in circulation. So if you took the higher dose, you bound to the 100 units of toxicity, but then when the 1,000 units were dumped into circulation, you've got another 1,000 zeolite cages available to combat them, and you don't get the redistribution. Because if you just took the lower dose, your body probably isn't able to handle all those toxins that were dumped in during the toxin tumble into circulation, and some of them are going to find a new home, and there you have the redistribution, which is going to result in a stressful detox experience and a number of undesirable effects. Reason 2, a higher dose of zeolite helps remove immune stimulating substances that are released during the detox process, things such as microbes and microbial waste. As toxic elements are dumped into circulation and exposed to the immune system during the detox process, and the body starts attacking these toxic elements, that's going to result in inflammation and a stressful experience on the body, which is more likely to cause detox reactions. Let's talk about biofilm disruption. It just takes a little bit of zeolite to go in and disrupt a biofilm, these clusters of toxic elements. And once you break open the biofilm, let's say you grab some lead from the biofilm, now you've exposed the immune system to all the other toxic elements that were just broken apart and released from the biofilm. So the key is to have not only enough to break open the biofilm, but enough available zeolite cages to grab to a number of the toxic elements that were released from the biofilm. So taking a low dose often results in a detox reaction because it opens the biofilm, but then your body has to deal with this mess. You get the symptoms, you get the redistribution, you get the detox reactions. You take the higher dose, it breaks open the biofilm, but then it starts grabbing these toxic elements before the immune system has a chance to attack them, resulting in inflammation, etc., and then you don't get the detox reactions. Microbial mayhem. Generally, when you detox, there's going to be microbes stirred up, things like yeast, things like parasites, bacteria, potentially viruses, various things. And the challenge with a lot of these things is as they're exposed, whether this is from biofilm disruption or something else, or they were attached to a metal, and as you remove the metal, they're exposed to the systems of the body, then they're being attacked by the immune system, and now they're releasing their own waste products, which are also very toxic. So this is another reason where potentially detox reactions can occur, because you remove a metal, let's say a toxic metal, and now you've released all these microbes, and the microbes are causing chronic immune responses and wreaking havoc on the body. So we want to have enough zeolite to, one, basically remove the toxic metal, but also have enough to deal with some of the stress caused by the microbes here. The microbes release waste products such as ammonia, which can be very toxic, and zeolite can bind to ammonia and help calm down the system, potentially binding to viral particles, potentially binding to some of these other things that are released, but generally the higher dose can help with some of the microbial issues as well. Reason 3, the higher dose of zeolite helps remove some of the byproducts of detox that can be stressful on your body, such as excess histamine and free radicals. As the body is working hard every day to keep up with the toxic invaders that are coming at us from all angles, the body is producing a number of inflammatory agents such as histamine to help combat these things. And as we start detoxing, a lot of times our body increases the level of histamine production to just as the response to the detox. And the histamine can result in a number of undesirable conditions, especially with someone with mast cell activation syndrome or histamine intolerance. And taking a low dose can result in increased levels of histamine production because it's a stressful experience on the body, and extra histamine is going to be produced. But the higher dose can actually result in a lowered level of histamine. Now, zeolite does have direct binding capacity towards histamine. So for one, as the histamine is being produced from the detox process, you want the extra zeolite cages available to help bind to some of those things. So overall, it's generally, and it's used quite often to help with histamine issues. But we have to consider the dose again, because taking a low dose, even if used to help bind to histamine, can actually result in an increased histamine release, because if it's a stressful experience on the body's probably going to end up releasing more histamine. So it's all about the body's reaction to the product, right? It's not about all this direct stuff. It's about, is your body going to respond? Is the total stress load on your body when you're taking zeolite being reduced or increased? If you're having detox reactions, it's definitely being increased. You ideally want to be feeling nothing, or you want to be feeling better. In an efficient detox, your total stress load is actually being reduced as you detox. Let's talk about free radicals and oxidative stress. So our bodies are producing free radicals every day, and if our bodies can't handle the total amount of free radicals being produced through what's called our total antioxidant capacity, just our natural defense system against them, then we're getting an increased level of oxidative stress, which is resulting in inflammation, accelerated aging, etc. Now, during the detox process, as our body is exposed to a number of these toxic elements, there's generally going to be an increased number of free radicals produced. So taking a higher dose of zeolite is going to have extra zeolite particles available to grab some of these free radicals. Because zeolite actually can scavenge free radicals, opposed to donating an electron like many antioxidants, it's actually trapping the free radicals in its cage. So as free radicals are produced during the detox process, which could potentially be causing stress and symptoms, the zeolite at the higher dose, because it's all about having these leftover zeolite cages, are able to grab some of these free radicals. Now, taking a low dose of zeolite, which causes a stressful experience, will often result in an increased level of free radical production. Because the body's under an increased level of stress, free radicals are going to be produced. Taking the higher dose results in a lower level of free radical production, because it's reducing the total stress load on the body, and it's also directly binding to some of the free radicals. Zeolite's actually a very unique antioxidant, and it's got a pretty incredible ability to combat oxidative stress, one, just from the direct scavenging of the free radicals through trapping them in its cage, but also by really removing some of the root causes of the free radical production. So things like heavy metals and other toxic elements that are resulting in excess free radical production, if we remove those, the body's not producing as much free radicals. And then the third thing is by increasing the body's natural antioxidant or total antioxidant capacity, just its natural ability to combat these things. And this is comprised of things like glutathione peroxidase, superoxide dismutase, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and various other things. And zeolite can help improve the status of those things. One, but it has to be an efficient detox. Because if it's an inefficient detox from a low dose and it's stirring things up and stressing out the body's going to have to use additional resources, which is going to lower levels of those nutrients. Now, if the detox is efficient and you're reducing the total stress load of the body through the higher dose, your body's actually not having to use up its resources as quickly because the zeolite's helping out. And then you've got built up levels of glutathione peroxidase, SOD, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E. So very interesting there. And on the case studies page on zeolitelabs.com, you'll see that a lot of times the vitamin levels will start skyrocketing when taking ZeoCharge without any other supplementation. And it's because it's reducing the total stress load. So the tissue levels of vitamins are naturally going to be higher because they're not being used up by the body as quickly to combat free radicals and other stressors. Reason number 4 is that the higher dose of zeolite is helping remove your daily dose of toxins, which is lowering your body's natural detox capacity. Your daily dose of toxins is just what you're exposed to on a daily basis. And this is going to be from external exposure and also internal production. So these are regenerative toxic elements, right? Just the toxins that are made new every day. So things from external exposure like the food, water, air, personal care products, etc. But then also the internally produced toxins, things from metabolic waste products like ammonia and urea, and also microbial waste products, some of the endo and exotoxins produced by the microbes in our bodies, which also include ammonia. And zeolite does have a very strong affinity for ammonia, and I think that's one of the really strong benefits of zeolite is binding to ammonia, releasing stress on the body. So as we're exposed to this daily dose of toxins, all the toxins just from daily exposure, if our bodies can't even keep up with that level of toxicity, our bodies are not going to be prioritizing removing the deeply stored metals and other toxic elements from tissue and organs. So that's really, I think, one of the number one keys to detox is effectively removing this first layer, this daily dose of toxins, which makes room for your body to naturally start processing some of the other things more effectively. Let's talk about some of the internally produced toxins. Right? We all are producing a number of toxic elements in our own bodies on a daily basis. Some of these are metabolic waste products. And this is normal, we're all producing them. And in a perfectly healthy individual, all these toxins being produced are just being excreted through natural detox processes, no issue at all. But what happens if your body's not working optimally? Potentially you have liver dysfunction or kidney dysfunction, and now you're getting a buildup of these toxic elements. This is where a problem occurs. And now you're combining these internally produced toxins with the externally exposed toxins and also, mycotoxins and all sorts of other stuff, and now your body's just having a difficult time handling them all. Ammonia is a big one. It's a metabolic waste product. It's normal to produce it, but if it's not being excreted from the body rapidly, it's a pretty serious issue. And let's say you have liver impairment because the body takes ammonia and it converts it to another byproduct called urea in the liver. So if your liver's not functioning optimally, it's burdened with something else, then you get this buildup of ammonia and it's incredibly toxic and actually go to the brain, damage your central nervous system. Now, that's the problem, for one. So zeolite going in and helping bind to that is absolutely crucial. Now, if your kidneys aren't working properly, it's possible that you have a buildup of urea because ammonia is converted to urea, then it's excreted through the kidneys. So if either your kidneys or your liver are not working properly, you could have a buildup of ammonia and urea. And then if those aren't working properly, then you're just going to have a buildup of all sorts of other toxic elements because your natural detox organs are not functioning optimally. Some people that can't keep up with their daily dose of toxins are actually experiencing detox reactions every single day, even without taking any sort of detox supplement, just because their body can't actually keep up with the demand of toxicity and they're getting redistribution and accumulation of toxic elements. So removing this daily dose is really crucial to even get to the next layers of detox. And by removing these toxic elements from the daily dose, it's freeing up energy for the body to start working on other things as well. So it's raising the body's total detox potential. Reason 5 is that a higher dose of zeolite can help optimize your body's natural detox capacity by balancing pH levels, reducing inflammation, calming down the immune system, reducing oxidative stress, and improving nutritional status. The amount of toxicity each person is able to handle is determined by what I like to call total detox capacity, or just your natural ability to remove toxic elements. The healthier you are, the higher your natural detox capacity is going to be. And your natural detox capacity is going to be lowered through things like increased oxidative stress, inflammation, overactive immune systems, pH dysregulation, etc. There's only a certain amount of energy the body has to deal with everything that it has going on. And some of this is focused on detox and some of it is focused on other things. So the higher your natural detox capacity, the more detox energy you're going to have to start removing some of these toxic elements. The key is to have a high enough natural detox capacity to, one, remove everything that's coming in on a daily basis so that you're not getting an accumulation of other toxic elements. And at that point, if you can't keep up with what's coming in daily, you're increasingly becoming more toxic every day because your body's processing what it can and the rest of the toxic elements are being pushed into fat for storage. So the key is to have a high enough natural detox capacity, one, to keep up with the daily dose of toxins that are coming in, and two, to have enough energy to remove some of the deeply stored toxic elements that have accumulated in our bodies over time. So the higher dose of zeolite is able to raise your body's natural detox capacity, whereas the lower dose of zeolite that results in a stressful detox experience will actually lower your body's natural detox capacity, because the higher dose is able to help reduce oxidative stress. It's able to reduce inflammatory reactions, reduce inflammation, help balance pH, where the lower dose does the opposite. Because if the low dose causes stress, that's going to result in increased inflammation, increased immune response, increased histamine production, increased free radicals, etc. Because if you take a low dose and it just stirs things up and then you get the redistribution and all the other issues where it's just a stressful experience on the body, your body's now going to have to work harder than normal to stay in balance, and it's going to have to deploy more resources, and this is going to lower your natural detox capacity. But if you take the higher dose, or a high enough dose, and it reduces the total stress load on your body, that is going to raise your body's natural detox capacity. So it's all dose dependent. The higher dose, gentler and more effective. All right, let's get into a couple potential exceptions to the rule where taking a higher dose might actually be more likely to cause a negative reaction than the low dose, right? So this is just general principles. This is the theory. It works most of the time, but everyone is so different that there's no way to know exactly how each person's going to respond. So a couple scenarios where potentially a higher dose is more likely to cause a reaction is scenario number one would be parasite dumping. So let's say that you remove a bunch of metals and other toxic elements right off the bat when taking zeolite at a high dose, but the parasites that were feasting on these toxic elements now have lost the fuel source and they just start heading towards the exits. So a lot of people will experience some sort of parasite cleansing effect while taking zeolite. Now, if you've removed a ton of toxic elements right off the bat and the parasites kind of get scared, they might just freak out and start leaving. And at that point, you could potentially experience diarrhea or vomiting or some sort of purging event. Something to consider. Another situation is that if a low dose is really more of a binding dose opposed to a detox dose, it may be less likely to cause reactions. So for example, let's say you're taking just a very small amount of zeolite and it's able to go in and bind to some of the toxic elements floating around and it's actually helping you. You're feeling better because it's reducing your total stress burden, but it's not getting your body to the point where it's going to start dumping out the metals from the organs and the tissue because it's not comfortable to do that. It's just working on this layer one of the onion, level one toxicity. But then let's say you took a much higher dose and it resulted in the body it just resulted in a deeper level detox. That could potentially result in a detox reaction because now your body is just exposed to your circulating toxin load has just increased because your body just dumped all sorts of other toxic elements into circulation. And at this point, you need an even higher dose. So sometimes there's a low dose which doesn't cause symptoms. There's a middle dose which does cause symptoms. Then you take an even higher dose and it doesn't cause symptoms. Because at the even higher dose, after you've stirred stuff up and you've got this big toxin dump, now you've got extra zeolite cages to sop that up. So that's where it gets pretty tricky. Generally, the low dose is enough to stir things up and cause detox reactions, even at very small doses. But sometimes, let's say you have really deeply stored mercury that is just not budging and your body doesn't want to let go of it. And then you start taking the higher doses and eventually it starts dumping. And sometimes it's delayed. So some people, what will happen is they'll take zeolite for a month and they're feeling no reactions. And then after a month, all of a sudden they start experiencing reactions. And I think it's because they got to that next level of detox or next layer. And at that point, they generally have to raise the dose even more to combat that extra toxicity that they're currently exposed to. The formula for a successful zeolite detox is to successfully remove toxic elements from the body while reducing the total stress load on the body. So in an effective and efficient detox, we're effectively removing the toxic elements, but we're also improving vitamin status. We're reducing oxidative stress. We're just reducing inflammation, calming down the immune system. We're just reducing the toxic stressors on the body, and we're not causing any additional stress in the process. In an inefficient detox, we might be removing some toxic elements, but at the same time, we could be stirring things up and getting the redistribution and just having a stressful experience, which is actually resulting in lowered levels of nutritional status and increased inflammation, increased oxidative stress, etc. So it's important to realize that you could take the same exact product and it could either reduce the total stress load on your body or increase the total stress load on the body, and it's dose dependent. So taking the low dose that's more likely to result in an inefficient detox could result in impairing nutrient status, resulting in excess inflammation, etc., because the detox is stressful, while taking the higher dose is effectively removing the toxic elements, but it's doing so without resulting in a stressful experience on the body. So let's get into how much should you be taking then. Now, the general dosing principles are: 1, if you experience a detox reaction, take more, not less. If the healthier you are, the less you need. And more is better within reason. There's really no way to know exactly what the perfect dose is for each person because there's so many factors to consider. But what we found is that a really good starting dose for ZeoCharge is 10 grams or 2 scoops, which is 10,000 milligrams. And that's taken all at once, just one time per day. And then if some sort of reaction occurs, then to take 20 grams or 4 scoops the next day. Now, the vast majority of people are not going to experience these detox reactions. This is generally in people that are going to be more sensitive to detox reactions, that have experienced detox reactions in the past. And these people that have potentially taken liquid zeolites or other, chelation therapies. The vast majority of people are going to feel nothing at 10 grams. I mean, that's like 98% of people. But if you're in that 2% that's extra sensitive, that's where you potentially might need even more than the 2. So we found that between 2 scoops and 6 scoops, or 10 grams and 30 grams per day, is really an ideal starting dose, especially if you're more sensitive individual prone to detox reactions. The higher the dose, the better, right? The more you're taking, the less likely you are to cause that stressful experience on the body. If you're healthy, then you might be able to get away with just 5 grams or 1 scoop, but we always want to err on the side of the higher dose, just because even if you're not experiencing negative symptoms, it's possibly still causing some stress on the body, and we just don't want that long term because we want an effective and an efficient detox. So between 2 and 6 scoops or 10 and 30 grams per day is a really good starting dose. The healthier you become, the less you need. So you can start with 6 scoops per day or 30 grams per day for the first month. Then you work your way down to 5 scoops per day the second month, then 4 scoops per day, then 3, then 2. We have a package called the Ultimate Zeolite Experience where you do that protocol. So it's 20 jars over 5 months. It's going to depend greatly on what you have going on. The more complex your health challenge, the more layers of toxicity you have, just the higher dose you're going to need to be able to address all those layers, starting with the daily dose and then working your way up to the deeply stored toxic elements. And we do recommend taking whatever dose you choose to take. We recommend taking it all at once, opposed to splitting it up throughout the day. Because this whole theory is not based on a cumulative amount of zeolite taken over the day. It's about per dose. So we found that someone taking 5,000 milligrams or 5 grams of zeolite twice per day is much more likely to have a reaction than someone taking 10 grams all at once. So we recommend just starting off 1 dose, 1 time per day, whatever you're going to do. Don't split it up throughout the day. So what should you do if you take ZeoCharge and you do experience a detox reaction, such as a headache, irritability, or joint pain? There's really 2 things you can try. 1, if it's just very mild and it's really not a big deal, just wait it out and let your body recover. And then the next day, take a double dose or a triple dose. So let's say you took 1 scoop or 5 grams of ZeoCharge, you got a mild headache. The next day at the same time, do 2 scoops or 3 scoops or 4 scoops. And then see if you experience a headache or if you just don't experience anything. If you don't experience anything, that's a sign that you're on the right path for dosing. The more the better. So let's say you take 1 scoop, you get a headache. Take 2 scoops, you get no headache. You still might want to take 3 or 4 scoops, up to 6 scoops, because even if you're not getting the headache, it could still potentially be causing a little bit of stress internally, and that's what you're not really going to know without, lab testing. But basically, if you took 1 scoop, you get a headache, then you take 2 scoops and you don't get a headache, you know that you need more than 1 scoop. So we know that. The other thing you could do is try to take more immediately. So a lot of people, when they do experience the reactions, which are most of the time a headache, a lot of times it occurs within 30 to 60 minutes of taking your first dose. So let's say you took 1 scoop of ZeoCharge and you got a headache 30 minutes later, you could try taking another scoop or another 2 scoops immediately. And a lot of times that does resolve the headache right then and there. Sometimes because the redistribution may have already occurred a little bit, it might not help as much, but then the next day just go straight to the higher dose. So you could either take more right away, or you could just wait, let things calm down, and then take more the next day. I just want to say again that this does not apply to all Zeolite products. This is from some of our research with ZeoCharge, which is a unique Zeolite product on the market. Please don't try this with anything else. Don't try this with other detox agents. And this is for educational purposes in general. I'm not making any recommendations here. Please consider carefully what you're going to do. Anytime you're doing any sort of detox protocol or considering detox, you really want to understand what you're doing, because it is serious business. If you want to take a deeper dive into this dose theory, you can check out the higher dose theory of zeolite document that is on zeolitelabs.com/education, and then you can scroll down and hit the higher dose theory. And that's a document that just goes into greater detail on the 5 reasons I discussed and just explains things in more detail. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to reach out with any questions, and happy detoxing.